We are now 1 week into Oktoberfest and it's time to show you our second fest beer of the season. A beautiful, malty, golden Munich Helles Lager. Let's get stuck in so that you guys can make this yourself at home. Guten Tag, brewers, and welcome to the Oktoberfest season part 2. Today we're going to be making a German Helles Lager for the holiday period, but today we've got a little bit of a twist. We're going to be going up against the iGulu brewing machine and their German Helles Lager kits. So if you're not aware of these, makes brewing super easy, all in 3 steps. We're going to be doing the all grain version and we're going to see which beer comes out on top. Let's get started. So, the grain bill for this Helles Lager is going to be composed of 85% Pilsner malt, 14% light Munich malt, and 1% of Supernova because, look, traditionally you'd use a decoction mash when you're brewing a traditional style Oktoberfest Helles Lager. That's where you get that little bit of melanoidin character coming through. That actually gives you those sugars that are not fermentable and that bit of thickness, mouthfeel, and complexity in the beer. But that's a lot of work, so I'm not going to be doing that today. So for today's purposes, we are using Supernova malt because it's already a melanoidin malt, which is kind of replicating the same thing of doing a decoction mash. Make sense? Confused? Comments below if you are. We can always do a decoction mash brew day in the future, so let us know if you want to see that. Now, let's get crushing, shall we? And you know what? Can't crush, no bucket underneath. This is a part of always checking your equipment setup. Give me a second. And now we can get crushing. All right, now let's start mashing in. By the way, for those of you keeping count at home, that's 9.18 kilos total of grain or 22.2 pounds. Now let's mash in. Now, the water profile for the Helles is going to be kind of soft. We're not really looking for a hard water profile that's going to overtake the rest of the mash. It's literally just about keeping things soft and in balance, and I just need to add a little bit to make sure that this is in check with everything else that's going on. So based on my tap water, this little addition of gypsum is going to make this 23 parts per million of calcium, 5 parts per million of magnesium, 15 sodium, 31 chloride, 31 sulfate, and 57 parts per million of bicarbonate. And I'm also going to be injecting a little bit of acid rail. So this is going to be 2.7 mils of acid, just to keep all the mash pH in check. There we go. Now I'm going to let this recirculate for a moment and dissolve all those salts, and then we're going to start mashing in. I'm using the paint mixer again because paddles are for chumps. No, honestly, it's just easier. Like, if you haven't tried this before, highly recommend it. 10 tips video, no, not 10 tips. Well, 10 tips video there for all you new brewers, but also equipment that every brewer should have up there as well, because this is a tip that just saves so much time and makes your life so much easier. Now, let's start mashing in. Now, as we always do in these videos, add a little bit, mix it up, add a bit more, keep mixing it up because you don't want dough balls. And we are going to be mashing at 65 degrees Celsius for 1 hour. So we're going for a fairly fermentable profile for this beer. There is 30 liters of strike water, then there's also going to be 30 liters of sparge water at the end of it. Which is going to give us a fairly decent amount of wort by the end of this. So we're going to have a fairly full fermenter. Let's hope we don't have blow-offs when it's actually chugging along. And the actual profile for this one, the reason behind the different grains that have been chosen is 1 Pilsner malt, because has to be, because this is a lager. So that's going to give more breadiness and a little bit slightly more nutty and kind of warming character than what you get from an ale malt, just a regular 2-row. Then the real star of the show is that light Munich. That light Munich is adding the real breadiness and the heft to it, and that feeling like when you get a fresh baked sourdough out of the oven and you slice into it and take a bite, and you've got that warmth to it, that nuttiness and that breadiness and that substance. That's what is going to really shine through in the Helles Lager, because the Helles is a light, easy drinking beer, but it also has that depth of malt character to it that makes it just so freaking delicious. And then that 1% of Supernova malt is just going to add that touch of sweetness at the end. Not this kind of sweetness that you get from crystal malts, more of the kind of sweetness that you would get from like a red ale, for example, like a red IPA. You got that like sweetness that's not overpoweringly sweet. I'm hoping for that just little touch of that coming through at the very end in the backbone of the body of the beer. All right, that is mashing done. I am now going to attach the top, what do you call this? The top screen onto ours. If you don't have the ability to recirculate over a screen like this, it really doesn't matter. All this is gonna do is let us recirculate and just get a little bit more efficiency out of this batch. If you guys don't have that ability, just whack your lids on and let this sit for an hour at 65 degrees Celsius. I'm also gonna check the pH of this in about 10 minutes from now, just to make sure that it's actually in the right range. If it needs a little bit of a bump, I'll add some more phosphoric acid. If it's fine, I'm just gonna let this thing ride. So, we will see you guys in an hour after we have finished mashing. So we're not sparging yet, but we thought that now, whilst the Helles All Grain Lager is mashing away, it would be a good time to mash in for the iGulu brew day. So we're gonna open up this bad boy and get cracking. Now they do have a number of different recipes on their website. We'll drop a link down below so that you guys can go check it out. And we do have an affiliate program with them. So if you guys want to get one of these units, you'll get $100 off by using our code Flying Wombat, all one word. And you can get to brewing in just 3 easy steps. That is all of our ingredients, I believe. Yep, cool. All right, so these are little hop extract kits. So you got your bittering hops, which are right there, which is, I'm guessing 15, must be 15 IBUs, which is in the range for a Helles Lager. And then we've got a couple of flavoring hop, Aroma and Flavour hop, little oil extract kits, which are pretty cool. So I'm just gonna rip each of these off and squeeze it into the fermenter. Nice. All right, hop oils are in. Oh, and by the way, it's really easy to know how much water to use because it's just got a line telling you right there, fill it up to there. So it's idiot proof. Next, we are going to go, was it yeast? No, it was grains.
Read the package. Read the instructions.
Hops, malts, then sprinkle yeast. There you go. I knew it. See, that's what I said. Let's make a little funnel thing and try not to spill any. All right, so this is just dry malt extract. So it's the same stuff I use when I'm making yeast starters. It's literally just a powdered version of real grains, which gives it real beer flavor. All right, that's all that in there. And by the way, they say not to mix it in. My suspicion about the not mixing in is so that you don't introduce possible infections, but yeah, anyway. Now we've got 2 dry lager packets. I'm guessing because they're both here, I'm just gonna go ahead and add both. And in we go. All right, oh, a little bit more left. Cool. Now I can pop on the lid. That goes on. We'll put on our clamp. And wouldn't you know it, that's brew day done. So, which one is faster to make? This by a country mile. Now I can go ahead and plop this into the iGulu itself. Let's move that out of the way. And this goes on down into the unit. And then you connect the gas to the gas outlet, close off this thing all the way so that you can't have beer escaping as pressure builds, connect that to the beer outlet, and we just need to scan our little RFID over to the little iGulu symbol over here. Where are you? There you are. And there we go. Easy as that. That's brew day done. Now this machine is going to take care of the whole process for us. It's going to take care of all the different steps in terms of temperature, holding it at the right pressure, and then dropping it down to serving pressure and temperature when this thing is ready to start pouring some fresh beer on tap. So that was a 2-minute brew day, and then in a couple of weeks we're going to be pouring some fresh Helles Lager out of the iGulu F1 machine. Now from here, let's pop back over and actually finish sparging. And now we are ready to start sparging out the all grain Helles Lager. So you can already see it's come over. So you can already see it's getting fairly clear. So that's why you recirculate, especially with things like lagers. Aside from the efficiency, the grain bed itself acts like a giant filter. So you can start to get a clearer wort from the very beginning of the brewing process, which is always a lot of fun. Now, 30 liters of sparge water are gonna go on top of this. It's already had all of its salts and its acids added, so I'm ready to just start tipping over slowly. And the whole idea behind this sparging step is to be gentle. You don't want to disturb the grain bed too much and make it all cloudy and move everything around. Besides clouding up the actual wort itself, you can also shift the grain bed and then you can get a stuck sparge. So we're just going to gently pour 30 liters of water bit by bit over the top of all of this. And as the water starts to drain through all the grains, it's going to pull all those extra sugars that are currently trapped in those grains into our wort, giving us better efficiency. Sparging 101 for those of you that are new to it. All right, once we're finished doing this, we'll be ready to start boiling. And we are scheiße, we are very close to boiling over. Is that German? No, the German is more like this. So we now have our 28 grams of spatula. So this is going to give us about 6.5 IBUs. Going in at the start of the boil. In they go to the hop spider. There we go, very nice. Then with 15 minutes left in the boil, we're gonna come back once again for our final flavor and aroma hop addition, which is going to be 50 grams each of Huell melon and Spalt Spatler. Now the reason I've done that split is because the Spalt Spatler is a noble hop variety, which is the more traditional way to brew this beer. But I have made this beer before with Huell melon, which is a newer German hop varietal, and gave really fruity and fresh characteristics that I really enjoyed. So I'm gonna do a half-half between the two. Half, you know, that old school herbal and kind of floral flavors and aromas, half with the fruitier stuff. And I think we'll end up with a very interesting Helles Lager at the end of that. So we'll come back to you with 15 minutes left in the boil. We are not adding our next round of hops, but I thought it'd be a good time to mention that you guys can check out our Patreon in the link down below to get more behind the scenes, more involved with us, and give us direct feedback and ideas on what we could brew for you next. Now, you'll see us when we're adding our next round of hops. And now for our final flavor and aroma hops. This is gonna give us about 12-ish IBUs from memory. I'm gonna whack them in here. Why not? I've already got the hop spider in there. And while I'm at it, I'm also gonna throw in our whirlflock. So that's just gonna help us clear things out before it goes into the fermenter. Now, 15 minutes left on the clock. At the end of that, we're gonna come back, start cooling this thing down and pitching some yeast. And that horrible sound is the sound of the counterflow while the plate chiller's starting to work. So we are now spitting this out, and I need to actually turn on the cooling mechanism, but now we're gonna start cooling this down to yeast pitching temperature, so aim for as low as you can get. I don't think I'm gonna get much lower than 18-ish degrees today, but we'll see how we go. We are gonna be fermenting with Lager yeast. We're gonna be running with the W34/70 this time around. So the Japanese lager and the Mexican cerveza both use Lager, but it was the S23 edition, which is supposed to be a little bit more estery, slightly more fruity. This version is more of your classic German lager yeast style, so a little cleaner fermenting. Still a little bit of fruitiness going on, but it's more about having that cleaner, more distinct lager flavor, which I feel like is a little more appropriate for this style. Also, side note, I used S23 on the original Helles Lager recipe on the website, so I figured let's change things up a bit and compare it to the W34/70. Anyway, we're gonna ferment at 14 degrees Celsius for about 2 weeks. Then we'll raise it up by a couple degrees for a diacetyl rest for a couple days, and then we'll drop it back down to start cold crashing before we lager out. Now, we'll pitch this once that's done. Look how foamy it got. So there's a lot of lipids and carbohydrates and complexity going on in this thing. So if it's this foamy now, it's gonna have awesome head retention. Now it's time to transfer. You get over there and I'll give you the money shot as it transfers over.
What temperature?
All right, so this is coming out at 21 degrees Celsius. We are going to It's probably by the end of this finishes coming through, probably about 20 degrees-ish Celsius. I'm happy to pitch at that temperature, maybe slightly warm for lager yeast, but not the worst thing in the world because this lager yeast can stretch up to 18 degrees Celsius for fermentation. I'm not gonna ferment it that hot, but it means we're fine. We're fine, basically. So I'm gonna transfer all of this and then we're gonna start pitching some yeast. Now let's pitch some yeast. You can jump on top of me, Odin. All right. Stop humping me. All right, that is done. I'm gonna close this up. I'm not gonna ferment under pressure. I will ferment under pressure at the very tail end of fermentation when we do our diacetyl rest. And that's just to pre-carbonate the beer a little bit before I cold crash. But for now, 14 degrees Celsius for the next 2 weeks. And then, yeah, we'll be getting ready to diacetyl rest and cold crash. So I will see you guys when I've got a finished beer. And here are the results of our labor. Well, a lot more labor for our one than for the iGulu. So, elephant in the room, color difference. Mine is slightly clearer and definitely more that traditional golden, like darker golden blonde color, which is unreal. I'm quite surprised by how light the iGulu version has come out. But one very big difference is head retention. The head retention on the iGulu beer is insane. It's like this frothy, foamy head that you kind of get on like a Hefeweizen, except this is a Helles Lager, which is kind of nuts. But let's go in for flavor, shall we? So good. Okay, so our Helles, so malty, so rich, so complex. There's heaps of nuttiness going on and layers of breadiness and like, you know, I hate the word, but like just quote unquote maltiness, which if you've had like Munich malt in your beers, you'd understand what I mean by that. It's a very hard flavor to describe, other than that it just tastes like the fluff of fresh baked sourdough bread, like that deep, rich maltiness, which is absolutely awesome. Finishes very clean thanks to that W34/70 yeast, which is exactly what we wanted for this type of beer. So it's absolutely spot on. But let's try the iGulu, shall we? Wow, that's fruity. That's surprisingly fruity and like in a really good way. So and I suspect that's got to be ester profiles coming through from the yeast. It just has to be. Where this one is really clean on the palate, really tidy, tight finish. This one is an explosion of like tropical fruit cup flavors, like the literal tropical fruit cups that you can get like for kids with like the diced up fruits inside it in the juice. That's what that kind of esters present as. It's like very peachy and very stone fruity, and then just generic tropical fruit flavor just jumping out of the glass, which is wild. I'm not hating that, I'm kind of digging it. Yeah, and then it's got decent bitterness. The bitterness is about the same between the two, I'd say. One isn't more bitter than the other. I'd say they're fairly in balance with each other and in balance with the beers respectively. It's actually really not too shabby. I do definitely prefer this recipe pack to the original recipe pack that we used, which I think was an amber lager. So highly recommend having a crack at the Helles Lager pack because it's definitely been constructed better. It's a really well-constructed beer, actually. I would be stoked if this was the first beer I ever made. It's really not too shabby. So final verdict, I would say I prefer ours. I think it's far more traditional in terms of a Helles Lager. It hits the color profile, it hits more of that cleaner, more subdued esteriness and focuses way more on the maltiness of the beer, which is, I think, very important in a Helles. However, they both need to clear up. Like this one just finished today in the iGulu, this one finished yesterday, literally been kegged for 1 day, so they need time to clear up and clarify, but I love both beers. I would really like this if this was the first beer I ever made. I would be so impressed. It would definitely get me on the brewing bug. But yeah, we need to taste all of these beers together. Next week on the channel, however, we are going to be brewing the far more traditional beer that we've ever made in terms of an Oktoberfest, which will be a decoction mash Marzen. We're going to go old school for this one. I'm sure it's going to bring a world of hurt, but I'm ready for it. As Michael Scott would say, I'm ready to be heard again. Anyway, after that, we're gonna taste all 4 of these Oktoberfest beers against each other. So both of these Helleses, the decoction mash Marzen and the Hefeweizen wheat beer from last week, and we'll see which was the best Oktoberfest beer of the season. Cheers, guys, and we'll catch you next week.